And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880 and on YouTube at realestateshowOregon.com. I'm Pete Belcastro. This is Alice Lema. We're both real estate brokers with John L. Scott in Southern Oregon. We get together with you once a week here on the radio and on YouTube to talk about our favorite topic.
Real estate in Southern Oregon, real estate all over the world,
Yeah,
real estate, real estate, real estate.
And you know, when you get into it, there's so much going on too. When you think of this business and what it covers, how much it entails, how many people are involved, and the biggest thing is what an enormous economic impact it has on the Rogue Valley.
Yeah, it really does. It is one of our major industries, and I don't think people quite realize that. And it's not just the real estate; it's the affiliates, it's the title companies, it's the people that help keep your house running. Like how many people's air conditioner went out this week?
Yeah, and you see those guys walking around all over. It's an enormous industry that encompasses really millions of dollars. When you think about it, that Jackson County last year almost sold $3.5 billion
with a B,
billion dollars worth of real estate
in Jackson County.
Just Jackson County.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing thing that goes on. So what have you been doing? Tell me about the market. We're talking about the market. What are we seeing out there that you as a buyer or seller need to recognize as we go forward here? Because I want to tell you, one of the best things we have, is the 6 cycles of the year. Mm-hmm. They call it 6 phases to the yearly housing cycle, right? And this is let me just show this, and you can comment on. So we go through six phases. Okay, New Year, kickoff, spring, summer, pre-summer, summer, fall, and winter. You can see how the lines go here. And we right now, Alice, we are like right there.
We're crescendoing out of the spring summer rush.
Yeah. It peaks right around the 1st of July. Between July, and then starts kind of to slowly work its way down to winter. We're like right there. But look where it is. It's right in the middle of there's a lot going on. That's why it's there.
And we have more activity than we've had in quite a long time. And especially this time last year, there's a lot more doors being open. When we say it that way, what we mean is they're tracking how many showings there are in Jackson, Josephine County. Mm-hmm. And they're saying there's a lot more people out there looking at houses this time than there was last year. And the reason that's important is because we still have a lot of supply. But what it's telling us, we have a huge amount of buyers. We call it the backlog of buyers. They're still out there, and with the interest rates going down, it makes it a very exciting time, and we haven't really had the slump yet. The summer slump is not here.
I've certainly not felt that either. It seems like there's more of it going on as we've gone through the summer.
Exactly.
We had a little bit of that smoke spell, and thank goodness, and the firefighters, and bless them for all their work. Hopefully we're not going to have any more of that, but that week we had that was awful didn't seem to affect too much. I know
not too much. I did have some people from out of the area cancel their tours, but they came back right away. Last year, this time, they canceled their tours. They did not come back. They actually moved to other states.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
And what it also did was create fringe opportunities along the side. Was that people in the tourism business and even in real estate, people were extending the season out. You started a little bit earlier in May, maybe to April, and you go to October, November, and try to avoid those times.
So they weren't so financially dependent.
It changed the economy. It changed that dynamic around there as well. So tell me what you saw this last week, buyers, sellers. What's the biggest thing right now? We got lots of people who are interested, buyers out there who always are looking. They're always looking for different properties. What's the big word for them, you think, this week as we go?
For the buyers?
Yeah.
For the buyers, the big word is know what you want and know what you can afford before you go out. It's not a time to be looking and lollygagging, because even though it is what we're calling more of a buyer's market and you have a lot more choices, the really sweet deals are gone in a nanosecond. Yeah. You don't have time to go home and think about it for 2 days. So know what you want and have your pre-approval ready. Talk to your lender and ask, okay, can I go a little higher? Should I go a little lower? But have all that information in your head and in your hand before you go out. Don't wait till you have an offer.
I always talk to them when we talk to buyers, we're looking, and the worst thing you can do is to find something that you really, really like, but you're not ready. And that's what you're saying is don't put yourself in that position
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Because
It's
you're
also
going to cry over
yeah,
it.
and it's also you can't really write offers. No real estate agent's going to write an offer for somebody who's not qualified or has the cash in the bank. But I just don't want the buyers to be tricked into thinking because the market is good for them right now that it's a little bit more of a buyer's market that they have all the time in the world, because they don't. And it's every price range. We have people doing multiple offers in the 600 and 700 range.
Really?
Even when
Wow.
yeah, but they're houses that could have sold for more like 8 a couple of years
they're
ago,
coming down. Okay,
right?
yeah.
So the buyers are the smartest people in the world. They're the most educated, but I just don't want them to be lackadaisical or a little bit asleep at the wheel, because just because the prices are down and interest rates are down and it's a little more in their favor right now, you cannot be asleep at the wheel, because the good deals are going to go in a second.
And so, lenders are being pretty cooperative with this. They're writing pre-approval or pre-qualification letters because, again, you said agents won't write offers without some of the, you can write an offer without a pre-approval letter. You say, I'll provide one within a certain amount of days. But on the seller side,
yeah, why would somebody take that? Because it's like saying, I want to dance with you, but I haven't taken any lessons yet. Not that a person needs lessons to dance. Maybe that was not such a good example, but you get the drift.
No, and it makes sense. Because, again, you can do that. And you want to do, if you're the buying side, is that you want to have an offer that the seller is going to have a chance of saying yes for, right?
Yes, especially if it's one of those really sweet deals or a really amazing property. You don't want to mess around too long in negotiations, because the seller can take an offer from anybody else.
Yeah. And that seems to be happening, as you say, there's multiple offers coming across the board. Now, remember, last time we were talking about that first 30 days. And how important it is for the first 30 days for the sellers. Now we're talking about the selling side, that if you're not ready, or you put your house on too early, not done, not ready to go, that first 30 days is after that, your chances just go down, 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 correct?
It does. And a lot of that is because, again, the buyers are just more sophisticated these days. The internet educates them instantly. And so many of them will actually only go look at properties that have been on the market 31 days or more. That's an actual strategy in effect. So if you're a seller, then you're more likely to get a lowball offer. Mm-hmm. But if you're a buyer, you're going to have less selection. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. But putting your property on too early, what we mean by that is that it's not completely clean, the yard's not done. You might need a new roof. You might need some freshening up with your concrete if you have a lot of cracking or it's actually tripping hazard, stuff like that. That's what we mean by putting it on too early.
What's happening, you think, one of the parts of real estate that I always find the most frustrating, okay, as an agent, I don't know if you do this or not, is dealing with repair addendums that once you've got a deal, and then you're going to come back and do this again, because you think, well, I've already negotiated a price. I'm the seller over here. I've negotiated the price, and now the buyer comes back and wants more, right?
Right.
And that can really cause tension. So
it does, and it's we have this little saying: tripping over dollars to get to pennies, and both sides do it. The buyers do it, and the sellers do it. But I look at this as completely preventable if Southern Oregon had the custom of doing what we talk about doing, which is the sellers get a inspection up front. Even if they're not able to fix anything, they have that disclosure up front, and then the buyers are more prepared, and there's less back and forth about what we're going to do with the condition of the property. Because those conversations now, if you don't get that inspection until the buyer does it, like second week, sometimes later, depending on your inspector's availability, you're halfway through your escrow. You don't want to go back on the market as a seller.
No, you don't. Not at all. You see more of that now. I mean, if a person has an older home, I would obviously, you need to have that pre-inspection. What about newer homes?
I think so too. I have had so many brand new construction have problems, and it's not the builder's fault. They just didn't know. Somebody went through too quickly. They didn't finish something. We have a lot of problems with insulation not being done right in the ceiling and in the crawl space, or missing completely. We've had garage door opener motors not be installed. And they just forgot, they're trying to get it done and they just didn't do it right. We've had, the little tack things for the carpet, those, it's just all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Anything can happen with
Anything can happen. Yeah, doors that don't open right, windows that don't close correctly.
I found myself when I was doing this is when you live in some place, especially for a long time, like 28 years, I would say same house, you really don't see everything. And I was real surprised. I did a pre-home inspection, when I sold my house, and I really do recommend those to everyone. We just did another one in Rogue River that same way, Alice, where the seller had it. We took care of all these things. The buyer came along, didn't have to have that expense of the home inspection. It was done. And everybody was really happy with that. And it was probably one of the few times that actually worked so well for me anyway. And it said, that's the value of being prepared as the seller.
Well, and on the seller side, you lose your buyers. They legally have the right to go buy something else. Even if there's really not that much wrong with the house, maybe something else comes down the street, that they like better. And they legally can get out and they get their earnest money back, and you got to start over.
Well, the latest SOMLS stats came out for that 3-month period, which this would be, I guess, April, May, June, and July now, which is if you go back to that housing cycle, that's the real busy time of the year. And you'd be surprised from 2018 to 2019, Alice, the total number dropped, which we have been predicting for that year, dropped from 850 sales to 777. The average days in the market were 38. That is continuing to climb a little bit as we now change our cycle. But the biggest thing that we talk about a lot sometimes is the value. The equity that you build up in your homes. Jeff Rogers, who's the owner of John L. Scott, was telling me the other day that statistic that they saw that 90% of homeowners in the state of Oregon have now equity in their homes.
And it's because the prices have rebounded since the crash.
Yeah.
And it's why we don't have very many foreclosures now. And it's very rare to see a short sale. In fact, the only short sales we seem to be in conversation with owners about right now are reverse mortgages.
Yes. And that's...
Which is... so heartbreaking.
We need to do another show on that.
We do.
Actually, because it's really good. She talked about foreclosures. Okay?
Which we used to have so many.
And look, of the 777 sales in Jackson County, 21 of 770 were either foreclosures or short sales. And of those, there was no short sales in 25 foreclosures. That was it.
And
in 3 months.
And that's what a normal market kind of looks like. Yeah. But remember back in the day, I mean, you've been doing this 10 years. I've been doing this 10 years. We used to carry Kleenex in the car because every appointment was just so heartbreaking and people just did not have any equity in their property. And it was something like over 50% 10 years ago.
Yeah.
8 years ago, over 50% of our transactions were either foreclosures or short sales.
Just not that far along. Look how much it's changed. The rise, though, was 2.3%. The 1-year change in terms of the value, it went up 2.3%, and that's
this year to date.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's good.
That is, and that's nice and stable. It's kind of flat. It's not super exciting, but actually, yay! We finally made it.
Because there was not that long ago where those numbers were in double digits.
They were,
and that's unsustainable, and that's not good. But boy, so is investing in real estate today? It may be a really, really good thing to do because
I think
it still
is,
continues. Prices are such. There's really a lot of opportunities out there. We got a break coming up. Pete and Alice here today on the Real Estate Show. Check us out at realestateshowOregon.com, which is our YouTube site, and we are coming right back after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880 and on YouTube at realestateshowOregon.com. Pete Belcastro, Alice Lema here in the house, both here with you today as we move through the month of August. School's going to start, Alice, in a couple of weeks.
Somebody was taking their kids to school today. Who's starting school already? What school district is that?
I suppose semesters start like in August, but everybody else. Anyway, who knows? That's early no matter what. Back to school, is that a weird time in real estate? I mean, it doesn't seem... You think everybody wants to get done by school.
The people who have school-aged humans in their house, they do want to be done. And the people who don't, they want to wait because they're out enjoying the lack of traffic, etc. And the vacation in the county parks and the national parks. That's a great time for them to go.
After Labor Day, you're right. And I've learned this, especially as you get older, that's the best time to travel is September and October because there's not many people out. And it is wonderful.
But
I love going to Eastern Oregon this time of year, to be honest.
Well, and then, the weather is great. Yeah. But it's also a great time to sell your house in the fall because, especially a year like a summer like we're having right now, there's still so many buyers out there, which is unusual, that if they don't find just what they like before school starts, you can still have that flow into September and October. And I think that's going to be really interesting for our little valley here.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about those stats in terms of the residential stats. They were down a little bit. 2.3% was the rise. Again, very few foreclosures that come on the market now, only a handful of them. Rural properties, what did they do during that time period, Alice? They actually, in Jackson County, went up in terms of total sales of rural properties, but still, in the larger parcels that were so affected by cannabis and maybe even by hemp, I don't know what it is, but they dropped 16% overall in value during that time period, the larger parcels. And I wonder what the hemp is going to do now to these parcels after we go through this season of thousands and thousands of acres of hemp that's been planted.
Well, and it's going to depend on the sales that the hemp producers have. So if they do well in selling their crop or the derivatives of their crop, then I think we'll see a lot of that money come back and people will want to start buying more rural property, and that would be the farmland, which the zoning is called EFU, which is exclusive farm use. And the commercial farmers, whether it's cannabis or cows, you still need your irrigation rights, deeded surface water, that kind of thing. So we saw a huge run up for the cannabis. We called it the green rush. And then the hemp is really everywhere in the valley, and yet the prices of the land have not gone up, which is very surprising. So I think we'll see it maybe next year.
Okay, the difference, though, I don't think you're going to see that. The reason the cannabis people, when they were here getting ready to open legal cannabis, they bought property. That's what run it up. Hemp people are not buying property; they're leasing, and that's a huge difference.
That would be, it'd be interesting to know the ratios.
Oh, I was even out at Rogue River Ranch the other day, and they plowed up a huge hayfield under there for hemp. I mean, did you see the guest editorial written by Arnie Abrams in the Mail Tribune this last Sunday? He wrote in what we're talking about here is, what are we going to do with all the single-use plastic that is thousands and thousands
right.
How many tons of it that's going to be landfilled, about runoff, about being stewards of this land, because it's happened. It's not the landowners again. It is people coming in and leasing land from landowners. So they're not selling. And that's really changed the dynamic, which is showing here why these values maybe haven't gone up, because a lot of people like Arnie said, I live next to this. They're building greenhouses. They're doing this. They're going to process this. Try to find empty warehouse space anywhere in Southern Oregon right now. None. It's absolutely none. And the reason, all this hemp has to be dried, Alice, and they're going to have to put it somewhere, and there's no warehouses. They're just going to do it. It's going to be amazing.
Well, we'll have to see, because I still think when the profits start coming in, I think it will start kind of bringing up the prices. But we'll have to see, because it does require that people purchase their land, not leases. But when we're in a downturn, some of the more expensive markets is what we call them, the bigger parcels, the bigger houses, the bigger plots of land that cost more money, those get hit first. And remember last summer, maybe a few months even before last summer, you and I noticed some of the more expensive properties were starting to go down. And so it works its way down the price chain, so to speak. So now that we're flattening out, and maybe we'll see some price increases next week. Not next week. Well, that would be interesting. Next year. Next year. And we'll be watching our land prices, because that is very telling if they start to go up.
It's really interesting. Remember, hemp is a 90-day crop. So even though we're sitting like here in August, and you think, why would anybody be planting in August?
Because they can, and it doesn't take as much water. So I'm really very excited about hemp, but only if we can keep it processed and all those other manufacturing jobs here in Southern Oregon.
Well, we have a show on that with Simon Hare, who's a former Josephine County Commissioner, back on our website. You can check it out. It's fascinating stories with this, and the thing is, everybody's seeing it now, and everybody's talking about this of what's happening with hemp.
Well, and didn't some of the vineyards start plowing under their
Well,
vines?
one did.
And they're
Yeah.
and they own lots and lots, tens of thousands of acres. So it'll be interesting to see how their profits fare.
Well, we went from the vineyard, I mean the orchards to vineyards, and who would have ever thought that hemp is just taking over? Again, there's concern. Arnie, I agree with Arnie Abrams in much of that in terms of we got to do better than this. The growers here, we want to support agriculture in this, but single-use plastics and the stuff that makes it has got to be better than that, Alice. They got to do better than just
Well, and Oregon's
throwing
known
stuff
for
into
we're supposed to be
landfills
more eco-friendly
Yeah,
than
and-
a lot of people. So
Anyway, but it's changing our economy. It's changing how we do rural properties. It's changed the value of rural properties, and you go on and on and on. The effect, the ripple down that you cause by the hemp explosion, really, that is transforming our agriculture area. If you want to make money, I know you like making money. If you want to make some money right now, we should all go in the hay business
right, because there's a shortage. It's all supply and demand.
And the price of hay is going to go boom like this.
Yeah.
So there's
That's what it is. It's all
balance
yep.
thing, and I don't know
It's
how.
all supply and
I
demand.
don't know how we get there. We talked about inventory. Remember a year ago, inventory levels were under 1,000 in Jackson County for a long, long time. They broke that
And that was
barrier.
causing more of a seller's market because there really was a tight limit on what you could choose from. And
Yeah.
the buyers did not negotiate their repair addendums. They just frequently took things as is. In fact, some of them waived appraisals.
That's the way it was, right? That's the way
Yep.
it was when inventory was really low. Well, now the inventory from a year ago is up 12%, which I think is pretty
That's
healthy.
a lot.
There was almost 1,300 units in Jackson County on the market. 1,300, yet in Josephine County, we're seeing affordability issues there. They were down by 10% from a year ago, and we're seeing the pricing in Josephine County is just things are just being gobbled up quickly.
So it really is an amazing time to buy if you've got some cash on the sidelines. I know the stock market's been going down and people have been talking about that. And I wonder if people are not taking their money out of the stock market and putting it into real estate because the interest rates are so low.
Well, I think you're right. And the values are going to go. In Josephine County, values were up 5.5%. So it was almost double what it was here. But again,
And that's
the
interesting.
affordability issue is tighter in Josephine County. It's the two markets are so different. They're intertwined, and yet they're very, very different.
They're like siblings.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? Well, one of the other things that we always talk about, those 30-day markets and kinds of things that go on with these stats out there. Pending sales, up. No surprise there.
Because there's more inventory, there's more homes to sell. So there's actually a lot more going on than we realized this summer.
If someone tells you that, the real estate market has slowed down, it has not slowed down. We just have more inventory. So more people are looking, therefore they're spread out further, right? Isn't that what that is?
Yeah, and I think they're taking longer to make a decision. One, because there's more houses or properties, because it's not all just houses. There's commercial. Commercial is strong.
It's hot.
Investment is strong.
Yeah. Rental, you talk about investment, people look, there's no duplexes out there. There's very little multi-unit family units for sale.
And those smaller ones are getting snatched
Yeah.
up, not necessarily by investors, but by multi-generational families, people that have an elder and a millennial, or a Gen X and an elder. There's all kinds of combos. And so that duplex, triplex, fourplex normally used to be pure investor territory, and it's getting a lot of competition from just regular folks that want to keep their older people at home.
Do you think we're getting a lot more talking going about additional dwelling units, the ability to do that, to add to your property? It seems to me we're talking about that more because the government rules, are easier now, right?
Well, they just changed a
You
few
do
weeks
that.
ago. Yeah. And that is one of the, you could call it a profit spot. There's opportunity in every market. So right now, splitting larger lots into smaller lots and adding more units. And with the new law, it's very interesting because because the single-family zoning is gone. They're allowing in municipalities of 25,000 or more, which pretty much gives us
Medford and Grants Pass.
Although Ashland's not far. We
Yeah,
get like
yeah,
two
yeah.
more people to move to Ashland. But if you are doing those kind of partitions, those lot splits, now instead of having 2 or 3, you could have 4 each.
Yeah.
So you don't have to necessarily do a lot split. So there's actually a lot more money to be made.
Now remember, Alice is talking about Oregon's new I guess
Single
law.
family, yeah.
When you see a lot in those 2 cities, if it's a single family lot, you as a developer or an owner can put 1, 2, 3, or 4 units on it.
You can even tear the house down and put 4.
Okay, you have to be able to follow the setback rules and all those kind of things,
Right, and you still need your approvals and you need your permits.
But what an opportunity. Nobody is so far that I have found, and I was asking Joe Brett this because he goes to those hearings all the time, the planning commissions. Nobody's filed for anything yet.
I have 2 people today that are out shopping for that.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, they're multi-generational, so
Okay.
they want multiple. They want one roof with big house or several cottages, and then they're going to add a couple, and that's going to be the income to support the family. It's just a brilliant idea. So they will be filing an application.
Don't you think it's going to take the first one, like everything when you do something new, it takes the first one to actually get done, and then it's like a snowball starts. Other people are going to follow suit. I think that's what's going to happen.
But Ashland's been doing this. Ashland had the cottage ordinance, which came in a year or 2 ago, where Ashland was allowing people to pepper their yards with small, very small houses.
But you could also divide the land.
They made that easier too.
Tiny lots out of that.
Tiny.
But
But with this new law, you don't necessarily have to do a partition now, and that saves tens of thousands of dollars plus a year of your life.
So that's really what the value is there. You don't have to go partition to have a single family here or distance.
Exactly.
Okay, I see that.
And then municipalities like Medford, they relaxed their setbacks a year ago.
Yes, they did.
So
to allow for more infill, more infill coming in. Well, I certainly think there are opportunities. You're right in terms of investing in real estate out there for people, and certainly opportunities to purchase if you're ready. As we talk about this amazing market that we're seeing going around us, that we're going to talk about more when we come back here. And the Real Estate Show continues here on KCMX and on YouTube at realestateshowOregon.com after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880 and on YouTube at realestateshowOregon.com. Next week, by the way, our show, we have an appraiser coming on. Danny Fry, who's a longtime appraiser, is going to be with us. We're going to talk about appraisals. And she's going to talk about, actually, when I talked to her this week, Alice, exactly what you just said about, she wants to talk about ADUs.
Oh, good.
How are they evaluated? Are they going to make properties go up or down, the neighborhood go up or down? So she'll be here next week.
Oh, that will be so interesting because everybody's wondering that.
Everybody, absolutely.
With all these new laws, if everybody starts adding all these cottages or apartments into their property, what does that do?
So Danny, she's an instructor for the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, and she'll be with us next week here. It'll be really interesting to what she has to say regarding that, especially if you're into that investing, thinking about that investing area. And I just can't wait to see the first person who goes in and does this, Alice, and puts up a fourplex on a single family lot.
Or a family compound. There's been a lot of demand for people wanting family compounds.
Okay, yes, and I have several of those too. Why is that, you think?
I think our society has just shifted the last 10 or 20 years, and assisted living is not an option either financially for certain families, or they've lost their allure. People just don't want to be in that kind of facility environment if they don't have to be. And so the families are grouping together kind of like they did in the old days. When I grew up, my dad, my mom, they all grew up in multi-generational families.
Well, we've had
houses.
We've had families just breaking apart for years and years and years. We're going to go, I can connect with you by my phone or things like that. And I think families are finally rather be together again in this world that we're in. We're stronger together than we are apart, and that kind of thing. My son is moving back from Texas. I mean, so we're seeing that, and you're right. Compounds, some sort of a place that 2 or 3 of us can live together, is going to be huge. It's huge right now. It's going to get bigger.
But it's still the same kind of building construct that we're talking about. It's multiple units, and so I'm wondering, my little investor brain wonders, in the near future, 3 to 5 years, does that mean that the single family home on a small lot that cannot be added onto, that will be purely isolated in its single familyness, if
Okay.
you will, if that will become the it girl, and that will be more have more appreciation and be more valuable just because of supply and demand. If over time people start adding lots and lots of units to their properties, and that becomes the norm, and the supply is higher in that department, then doesn't that mean that the single family house is going to become more valuable because there's not going to be very much of it? Supply and demand. So 36 months from now,
Okay.
60 months from now, we'll ask again.
I'm going to write that down to see if you got that. Let me give a couple more stats. 41 days in the market was the average in July.
Which is still super fast.
Pretty good. Sellers were getting 96.2% of their price.
But
that's
I think
actually
that's
down.
down.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
down because buyers have a little more negotiating power now because of the way the market is.
Well,
right?
and there's more supply, and we're still getting
More
a
supply.
lot of those rental properties coming on
Yeah.
the market, so that's increasing
Yeah.
our supply as well.
Available homes per buyer was up 33% during the
Wow.
month from July last year to this year.
That's a
to
lot.
4.1, and the month supply of inventory was up 34%. There's now a 3-month supply overall. Now, that's right halfway to a normal market still, right?
But that's an average.
But remember, the luxury market is a whole different story versus
Yep.
the
Several
250,000
years.
market.
Yeah.
So even though we talk about these things, it depends by price, by neighborhood, by community as we go through these stats, because it's going to vary by each of those places there. We talk about alternative housing a lot here, and you found out about potential future Alzheimer's housing, right, for people.
It was on the financial
that?
news today. It's so interesting. IKEA announced that they're going to get into the prefab housing market for Alzheimer and dementia patients, and they're doing it in conjunction with the Queen of Sweden, who apparently one of her relatives, and so they have these. Kind of experimental neighborhoods over in Europe, and now IKEA wants to get in, and they're creating a physical environment that makes the Alzheimer dementia person feel safer and more calm, because the agitation that those patients experience can be quite disturbing, and sometimes they get to where they can hurt themselves or others. And one of the interesting things is they're going to have lighter colored floors, because some of these people, when they see darker colored floors, they worry that there's no floor at all, and they panic because they're afraid they're falling into a hole.
No mirrors?
No mirrors, because they don't recognize themselves, and again, they panic, and sometimes they'll throw things at the mirror. So no mirrors, lighter colored floors,
sharp things, you said,
nothing
right?
sharp, supportive chairs. All the furniture is built without screws or bolts, so they can't scratch themselves or hurt themselves. And they're doing old style fixtures. So they're doing older style knobs and handles and things like that are more back in their memory from when they were younger.
So this would be like you put something like this prefab in your home or into your home area.
In your yard,
yard.
with the new state of Oregon ordinance.
Okay, so right. So right now, though, when Alzheimer's patients, you're going to go to an institution, like a Brookdale or those,
the
places.
memory care.
Memory
and they're
care.
very good and they're valuable.
And they're fine, but there's also group living, and people don't. The expense of those, $7,000, $8,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're spendy.
This alternative for people makes so much more sense.
Well, and
it
extends the amount of time that these patients can avoid the higher
Yes.
level of care. It also extends the time that the family has access to them, and they can go in and give some care themselves.
I mean, the biggest thing is the fear. If I have a place where they can stay where they're safe, I'd much rather have them at home with me than in a place at home that they would be unsafe. So I can see where that would be a really big thing in the future.
And if they do a
don't you?
whole neighborhood like this,
Wow.
then it can
Yeah.
be enclosed that way as well. So it's going to be very interesting to watch what happens with IKEA and the Queen of Sweden.
The Queen of Sweden.
But it's also an opportunity for our own local investors, because we have more than 50% over 55 demographically in our little valley.
Okay.
So maybe this is something that landlords could start providing. That would be interesting to see.
I'm waiting to see who's going to be the first one to do some of these things. We have a lot of great contractors here. We've had shows on where all we're doing is building so many, just three bedroom, 2 bath houses, and we need so many other things. And so hopefully it's going to happen. We're going to see something because everything is kind of falling that way. Legislation, government's going into this way of alternatives, giving people options.
Well, and they're trying to
good.
Reduce the overall expense of housing, not only for families that need more housing for their elders or extended family, but also for the renters. The state of Oregon was trying to help.
Yeah,
with all these new laws. And so, and interestingly enough, and you and I predicted this not that long ago, the vacancy rate for rentals is very slowly going up.
Going up,
and
right.
Vacancy rate is what we talk about, how many times people move out and how often they move out. And so a normal vacancy rate is 5 to 6%. And I think
much like the normal market for
normal
housing.
Market, right. So it's kind of stable. Like, we've been below 2% for how long?
Well, at one time it was below 1% for a while even.
Yeah.
So that's come up, but rents have also stabilized, as we've heard. They've even come down.
Some of them have come down.
Yeah. And we had Attorney James Stout last week with us on this, talking about this stuff. And that some people left the business, some people getting back in it. There's opportunity when somebody leaves, opportunities for somebody else.
Well, if you're an investor and you built your model based on the higher rents during that boom, then you better rerun your numbers, because if the rents go down, we want to make sure you don't have to sell your property.
Well, it's been quite a time. My goodness. August, school starting up. Fall is almost here. We're still at that peak time in the real estate cycle where a lot of activity going on. When we gather next week, again, I think we're going to talk about the same stuff, because this is just not going away. And again, our goal is for buyers and sellers to be ready, be smart, to be a smart consumer here, because your life will be a whole lot easier and you'll reduce your stress level a great deal, right?
Well, and you'll get what you want. You'll either get your house sold or you'll get one purchased.
Bottom line, you get what you want, but you got to be ready. And we're happy to help you, by the way, anytime at all, anytime you need that. And you can look us up, of course, at realestateShowOregon.com. Hey, we're out of time, so away we go. August moves along here, so again, be ready. It's a lot happening in the very dynamic real estate market. Thanks to Brett Nance, who ran our cameras today for our YouTube show. Appreciate that as well. You have a great week, okay? And
you too.
We'll gather again next week. Appraisals. We're going to talk about that. We're going to have a good show next week. Have a great week, everybody. For Alice Lema, I'm Pete Belcastro, and have a great week, and God bless you all.